can't believe it's been almost 14 years since I've worn this uniform. So this was the uniform that I wore whenever I was deployed to Iraq back in 2004. This was to support Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was in the Army National Guard for 9 years, including that 17-month deployment to Iraq, which by far was the hardest experience of my life. Not so much being in a combat zone, I mean, that was hard enough, but just being away from my wife, being away from my family, being away from my friends for that long was such a hard experience. But I'll tell you that I am grateful for that experience. There have been so many lessons learned from that deployment that have really just built the foundation of who I am today. While I was deployed, not only did I learn some of these principles that have led to my success, but I also learned some valuable money lessons. And there were 6 money lessons that I learned. What's crazy though is number 5. It wasn't so much a money lesson from my own personal experience, but the experience of witnessing other soldiers that were deployed. So today I'm going to share with you what were the 6 money lessons I learned from being deployed to Iraq. We're going to find out what those are right now. I initially joined the Army National Guard to help pay for college. My parents didn't have any money saved for me to go to school, so if I was going to go to school, I had to do it myself, and me signing up and joining the National Guard seemed like the best option, and sure enough, and it was. I mean, that joining the Guard was one of the best decisions I made for my life. Now, initially when I signed up, it was just a 6-year contract, but I enjoyed it so much that I ended up re-enlisting for another 3. I enjoyed it because I had just started my career as a financial advisor, where I was wearing the shirt and tie every single day, dressed to impress. And with the Guard, we had our drill weekends where I was going out in the field and I was putting the uniform on and I was getting dirty and just doing some fun G.I. Joe things. It was just kind of like this outlet, to get away from the office, to get away from the shirt and tie and just do something different. Now, what I didn't expect re-enlisting for that 3 years was, 9/11 to occur and then for National Guard units to get called up. And then sure enough, our unit got the call. If I remember, I think it was in October of 2004 whenever we got the notice that we were being deployed and we were going to leave the beginning of the new year, like January 3rd. So I had plenty of time to really think and stew about this deployment that was coming up. And right now I'm going to talk about the deployment itself, but really those few months of me having time to truly think and contemplate about this deployment, I mean, that was rough in itself. But when it comes to deployment, as I mentioned, there were some awesome lessons learned. I mean, some amazing life lessons learned, and there were also some amazing money lessons learned. So let's go ahead and dive into those right now. So the first money lesson learned being deployed to Iraq is communication is vital. Communication is vital. My wife and I, we just got married right before we left, and when you are separated from somebody, literally you are thousands of miles apart, the only thing that you have to do is talk on the phone. So we would talk as much as we could, just about our life and our marriage and what we were going to do when I got back. What that allowed us to do was to have really strong communication skills. And I picked up a lot of these skills, being deployed to Iraq. Before we were deployed, we had to go to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and where we did our pre-mobilization training. And with that pre-deployment training, we had to do countless battle drills, just different scenarios. And we had to run through this over and over again. Now, when I was deployed, I was a squad leader. I was an E6 staff sergeant. So I was in charge of 9 other guys. And it was me that was responsible for them, doing the right thing and to give orders and to give instructions. And I was responsible for them in how they received those orders and how they carried out those orders. So there was a lot of pressure on me to make sure that my squad was doing the best that they could be, but they also had to have a strong leader in myself, to make sure that things were getting done and they understood those directions and they followed my leadership. So I had to get really good at being direct, with my orders. I had to be really good at making sure that they clearly understood understood what was expected of them and what I was expecting for them to deliver. And there was just no, you couldn't be passive aggressive, you couldn't be vague on your directions. Like, you had to be very clear and concise of what was expected to get done. And that all translated into, my personal life, with my wife. And when we would have discussions about the things that we wanted to achieve, we had to be very direct about that, just to make sure that we clearly understood what was expected of each other. And that just tied in so much into what we were trying to achieve financially. And all that really tied into number two. Number two was having clear short-term and long-term goals. If you watch any of my other videos where I talk about goals, I talk about, goals that you want to achieve before you're 30. If you need to check out that video for sure. And once again, like, my wife and I, the only thing that we had to talk about on the phone was I couldn't share with her like what was going on each day because our mission was classified. We weren't able to share like details of what we were doing. So I could maybe share like a funny story or a funny incident, but like there wasn't a lot of that to share. So a lot of it was her sharing what was going on with her day. So after that, like, there wasn't a lot to talk about other than talking about what we wanted to accomplish together. And that was really trying to figure out what our short-term and long-term goals were. And I remember like some of our short-term money goals were we wanted to have $5,000 in our savings account. I was really determined to max out our Roth IRAs, for each of us. We wanted to get our debt paid off. I had a lot of my debt paid off before I deployed, but then I ended up having LASIK surgery. I ended up buying a laptop, so I could have internet access while I was deployed. So there were certain things that we had, certain debts that we had accrued before I deployed, and we want to make sure like those were paid off. And then after that, we started talking about what's the next steps we wanted to accomplish, buying a house, starting a family, and just started having those discussions. And I truly believe like having that deployment, that we had that separation where all we could do was talk about the things that we wanted to accomplish together. I mean, that was so powerful because a lot of couples don't take that time because we get so busy with life and work and everything else to where we don't really spend a lot of time talking about those things. But in our situation, like, that's all we could talk about. All right, the third money lesson learned was don't ignore life insurance. Now, when you are in the military and you are deployed, you get access to what's called the SGLI life insurance. So this is life insurance that's offered to all the different servicemen and women. But once you get back home, after you get out of the military, the SGLI insurance, like, that disappears. So when I got back home, after a year of being home, we started our family, we had our first child, I had our first son, that's when I ended up buying term life insurance through a third-party provider. Now, thankfully, all the soldiers I deployed with, like, they all took out an SGLI policy. I mean, it was really stupid not to. It's so cheap. Even if you weren't married, to pay like $10 a month, if something happened to you, at least your parents would get it or like a loved one would get it. But what I was really surprised with when people came back home, when the soldiers came back home, I didn't see a lot of them buying life insurance outside, of the military. Even those that were married and had kids, a lot of them just didn't really understand the importance because, hey, I'm back home now. Like, I'm not in harm's way. I'm not in a combat zone, so I don't need life insurance. And not even soldiers, but like, I see so many other people that have young families, that have a spouse, where they are the sole breadwinner, like they're the sole provider, for their family, and yet they don't buy life insurance. And term life insurance is so stinking cheap that it just makes no sense not to buy it. And if you want to learn more about life insurance, you can watch a Wealth Hack Wednesday video where I talk about life insurance and really the importance of life insurance and how that ties into your legacy, with your family. So please check out that video. It's definitely a money lesson learned, that I've continued to apply to my life. All right, the fourth money lesson learned is that there's always going to be an excuse not to invest. So here I am deployed to Iraq. I'm away from the United States. I'm away from civilization as you know it. And I was still able to invest. I was still investing into my Roth IRA. I ended up actually buying some stock. I bought Under Armour stock whenever I was deployed to Iraq. They had an IPO while I was deployed. It just made sense because while I was deployed, I was wearing everything Under Armour. I mean, I basically was an Under Armour spokesperson while I was deployed to Iraq. And when they were having an IPO, it just like made sense. Of course, I'm gonna buy Under Armour stock. Anyway, I still had access to investing, and everybody there did too. And since I was a financial planner, I was able to get many of almost all my squad members, several guys in my platoon and my company to start investing. Now in the military, you have access to the TSP, which is the thrift savings plan, but I actually had all of them starting with a Roth IRA. I'm just a big believer, a big fan of the Roth IRA. You can check out my other video where I talk about being a Roth IRA millionaire. But here I was investing, and others were investing as well. So I think about you that's watching this right now, that you have access to a laptop, your phone, an iPad, whatever, and you're not investing right now because you have an excuse. You don't have enough money yet. You don't know how to invest. You don't know what to invest into. Here we had soldiers, including myself, we were in a combat zone and we were still investing. You don't have an excuse not to invest. And if you're not sure where to invest, you can watch a few of my other videos where I talk about M1 Finance, which is an online broker that allows you to buy stocks and ETFs with no trading costs, no commissions. Or if you want to invest into real estate and you don't know how to actually buy a real property, you can watch my video on Fundrise, which allows you to start investing into real estate without actually having to manage any property. So once again, there are no excuses to not invest. The fifth hard money lesson learned is don't sacrifice long-term goals for short-term wants. And I know you're guilty of this. I've been guilty of this. There are so many times in life that we want something, fill in the blank. I want a new pair of shoes. I want a new purse. Not for me, but maybe my wife. I want a new jacket. I want a new car. I want a new house. The list goes on and on of the things that we want in life. I mean, there's never going to be an end surplus of the things that we want. So while I was deployed, I saw so many guys buying crap, that they didn't need. And while we were deployed, if your re-enlistment was coming up, you had the option to re-enlist and get a tax-free bonus. So back then, I think it was $15,000 that you could get tax-free if you signed up for another 6 years. Now, I was in that window period where I could have re-enlisted for 6 more years and received that $15,000 tax-free bonus, but I really started putting a pencil to it, and I thought, if I get back home, I could open up a lemonade stand and sell lemonade on the weekends and make more over 6 years than the $15,000 they were going to pay me. That I would probably mean I had to be deployed again and just be in the military that much longer. He's like, all right, I'm good. I'm gonna do my 9 years and I'm good. But I saw so many other guys re-enlist for 6 more years, which I love the fact that they were willing to recommit, to the military and serve our country. Like, I'm not taking away anything from that. But many of them were just signing up to get the $15,000 tax-free bonus. But this is the part that just drives me crazy, is that most of these guys, and actually I think almost everyone that I know, they'd already spent all the money before they even got home. There was one guy that bought a brand new car. Another guy bought a brand new Harley. Another guy, I think he spent money to do some renovations on his home. I mean, which is fine, at least I guess some home renovations. But the crazy thing was that they weren't even home yet and they'd already spent all of that money. 6 years of an upfront bonus is gone, before they even got home. And this is something that I just see people do all the time, that we have long-term goals. Like, we have bigger goals that we want to accomplish, but we keep sacrificing our long-term goals because of the short-term wants that we think that we need right now, but you don't. In another video, I talk about the #1 wealth killer: car payments. I mentioned the guy that bought a new car. I guess at least he paid cash. I think he still had a payment after that, but most people don't even have enough to put down, a significant down payment. So they have car payments that are just robbing them from accruing and building wealth. Stop sacrificing your long-term goals for stupid short-term wants. All right, the sixth money lesson learned being deployed from Iraq, and this is not so much a money lesson, but more of a life lesson. But be careful what you complain about. It's so funny when I see people complaining about their situation. I mean, I see people commenting on my channel that are complaining about stupid things, complaining because my introduction is too long, complaining because I didn't have long enough show notes. I mean, I'm like, seriously, that's what you're gonna complain about. And being deployed to basically a third world country and seeing how these people live, that you cannot leave your front door of your house without concern of of being shot, about a bomb going off, being in an ambush. I mean, it's just crazy to think about the situation that they lived in, and that was a situation that I was living in, for over a year. So I'm always very careful when I start to complain about something, about anything, because I can go back and just think about what life was living over there. So I challenge you, thinking in your mindset, when you start complaining about your situation, when you start complaining about your job or your boss, or where you live, or your apartment or your car, I mean, you start thinking about that and the fact, like, at least you got a job, at least you've got a car, at least you have a place to live. I mean, really try to put that in context, because chances are you are complaining about things that you should be grateful for. You need to flip the script and be grateful, be appreciative, because guess what? There's somebody out there that's got it worse than you. I can't believe it's been 14 years since that happened. It's been a crazy fun experience since then. I have learned so much. Like I said, I am grateful for that experience. It was hard, but my goodness, like, some of my core character, who I am today, I give that deployment to Iraq credit for it, because as I say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And right now I'm a stronger man because of that deployment. So I'm curious, have you learned any similar money lessons like I learned in Iraq? I'm sure that you have. Which money lesson resonated with you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, you know what to do. Like it, share it, all that fun stuff. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come join the Wealth Hacker family. This is Jeff Rose reminding you that it's your money, it's your life, and only you can make it awesome. Until next time.